past does not always hide in darkness. Sometimes it lies in plain sight, in fields, in forests, beside rivers, half buried in soil, silent, perfect, waiting for someone to ask the right question. In part 3 of this journey, we move deeper into the unknown, toward objects, monuments, and places that seem simple at first, until we look closer. In southern Costa Rica, archaeologists have found hundreds of stone spheres, some small enough to move by hand, others massive, weighing many tons, carved from hard stone, shaped with astonishing symmetry, placed across settlements, river plains, and ceremonial landscapes. They are known as the stone spheres of the Dikis. And even now, their purpose remains uncertain. To carve a sphere is not like carving a block. A block can be measured by edges. A wall can be corrected by corners. But a sphere has no direction. Every mistake reveals itself. Every imbalance is visible. Every surface must agree with every other surface. And yet these stones were shaped with extraordinary care, without written explanation, without surviving blueprints, without a clear record of why they mattered so much. Some believe the spheres marked status. Others suggest they were arranged in relation to pathways, settlements, or celestial events. Perhaps they represented power, perhaps ancestry, perhaps the ordered universe itself. But many were moved from their original positions long before modern study could fully document them, taken to gardens, public buildings, private collections, and with each movement, context disappeared. The stone spheres do not need impossible theories to be mysterious. They do not need to be alien machines. They do not need to be forbidden technology. Their mystery is quieter. Human hands made them. Human minds valued them. Human communities placed them with intention. But the intention is gone, and so they remain. Perfect shapes, holding an imperfect memory. Our next mystery is not round, it is vertical, a mountain of stone cut into doorways, tombs, and temples by a civilization that vanished into silence. Some cities are built upward, stone by stone, street by street, wall by wall. But Petra was not merely built, it was carved. Its monuments were drawn out of living rock, as if the mountain itself had been persuaded to become architecture. In the deserts of Jordan, behind narrow canyons of red stone, lies one of the ancient world's most haunting achievements, a city half hidden and still not fully understood. Then suddenly, the canyon opens and the rock becomes a facade, columns, pediments, carved detail rising from red stone. This is Petra, associated with the Nabateans, a civilization that mastered desert trade, water control, and monumental carving. But behind the beauty lies a harder question. How did a city thrive here, in a landscape where survival itself seems unlikely? Petra's mystery is not simply its beauty, it is water. The Nabateans engineered dams, channels, cisterns, and pipelines to collect and control flash floods. In a dry landscape, they turned scarcity into infrastructure. They did not conquer the desert by ignoring it. They listened to it, they studied its violence, and then they shaped a city around its rhythms. And yet Petra's story is incomplete. Trade routes changed, earthquakes damaged structures, political power shifted, the city faded. Not all at once, not in a single dramatic collapse, but slowly, as if the desert reclaimed it by patience. What remains is magnificent. But magnificence is not the same as memory. We see the carved stone, but the voices that filled these streets are gone. Petra was not impossible. It was sophisticated, and perhaps that is the greater mystery. Not that ancient people did what they could not do, but that they did what we have forgotten how to imagine. They read stone. They read water. They read trade winds, deserts, storms, and human desire. And from that knowledge, they carved a city into the mountain. But not every ancient monument was meant to be entered. Some were meant to be seen from afar, others may have been meant for the dead. In the middle of the Pacific Ocean, far from any continent, stone faces stare across the island. Their backs turned to the sea, their eyes once filled with coral and red stone, their bodies buried deeper than many first imagined. They are not simply heads, they are ancestors, guardians, the Moai of Rapa Nui. And their story is more complex than the myth of collapse often told around them. Nearly 1,000 Moai were carved across Rapa Nui, some standing on ceremonial platforms, some abandoned in transit, some still lying in the quarry where they were born from volcanic stone. The question that has haunted researchers for generations is simple. How were they moved? Not across flat factory floors, but across uneven volcanic terrain, without modern machinery. For years, theories imagined rollers, sledges, ropes, and massive labor forces. But one idea has gained particular attention, that the statues may have been walked, rocked side to side with ropes, moved upright, in a controlled rhythm. A stone body advancing slowly across the island, not dragged, guided. The old story often described Rapa Nui as a warning, a civilization that destroyed itself, a people who cut down every tree, a society that collapsed beneath the weight of its own ambition. But recent research has complicated that narrative. The story of Rapa Nui is not so simple. It involves resilience, adaptation, European contact, disease, slavery, environmental pressure. A tragedy, yes, but not a simple morality tale. And the Moai remain at the center of it all, watching. The Moai do not ask only how, they ask why. Why carve ancestors into stone? Why move them across miles of island? Why raise them to watch over the living? Perhaps because memory needs form. Perhaps because power needs presence. Perhaps because the dead were never truly gone, as long as they could still face the people who remembered them. Our next mystery does not stand beneath the open sky. It lies buried in a tomb, where golden objects, strange rituals, and a young king's death still raise questions. Some tombs are discovered empty, robbed, broken, forgotten. But in 1922, in Egypt's Valley of the Kings, archaeologists opened a sealed doorway and found something the modern world was not prepared to see. Gold everywhere, not just treasure, a frozen world, a chamber where death had been arranged with impossible care. And at the center of it all, a young king, Tutankhamun. Tutankhamun was not Egypt's greatest pharaoh. He did not build the largest monuments. He did not rule the longest. He died young, and yet his tomb became the most famous archaeological discovery in the world, because unlike so many royal burials, it survived, not untouched, but close enough. Close enough to reveal how the Egyptians imagined eternity. But Tutankhamun's mystery is not only the gold, it is the death. Why did a young king die so suddenly? Was it illness, injury, a genetic condition, a political crisis hidden behind ceremony? Modern science has examined the body, the bones, the DNA, the burial goods, and still, certainty remains out of reach. The tomb is full of objects, but not full of answers. And then, there is the curse. The story that those who disturbed the tomb were marked for death. A legend amplified by newspapers, by fear, by the seductive idea that ancient Egypt had protected its secrets from beyond the grave. But the curse tells us less about Egypt and more about us, about how quickly wonder turns into superstition, about how uncomfortable we become when the dead are suddenly present again. Tutankhamun's tomb is not mysterious because it proves a curse. It is mysterious because it collapses distance. A boy who died more than 3,000 years ago suddenly became visible. His possessions, his body, his fear of death, his hope for eternity, all of it packed into rooms beneath the desert, waiting. Our next mystery lies far from Egypt, in a landscape filled with stone vessels, too large to move easily and too strange to ignore. Across the hills of Laos, thousands of stone jars sit scattered across the landscape. Some stand alone, others gather in clusters, weathered by rain, wind, and centuries of silence. They are enormous, some taller than a person, and no one knows with certainty why so many were made. The jars vary in size and shape. Some are carved from sandstone, others from harder rock. Many weigh several tons. Their distribution suggests organization, purpose, repeated effort over generations. But purpose is where the evidence becomes uncertain. Were they funerary containers, markers of burial grounds, part of rituals for the dead, or did they serve some older function now lost entirely? Local legends speak of giants, of ancient feasts, of jars used to brew rice wine after victory. Archaeology suggests a more solemn reality. Human remains, burial goods, and funerary evidence have been found in association with some jar sites, but the full system remains unclear. The jars may have belonged to a complex ritual landscape where death, memory, and territory were carved into stone. The plane of jars asks a question common to ancient landscapes. How do we interpret a place when the people who understood it are gone? The jars remain, but the ceremonies do not. The words do not. The names do not. Only stone, only weather, only the shape of memory after meaning has faded. From stone jars in the hills, we move to stone walls in the ocean. A city built not on land, but on coral reef and water. In the remote Pacific, off the island of Pompeii, stands a city unlike any other, not carved into cliffs, not raised in desert, but built across a lagoon, artificial islets, canals, massive basalt walls. This is Nan Madol, a ceremonial and political center constructed from columnar stone, in a place where every block had to be transported, lifted, and arranged above water. The stones of Nan Madol are heavy, long basalt columns stacked like logs, walls rising from tidal water, structures built across more than 90 artificial islets. The question is not whether humans built it. They did. The question is how such an ambitious project was organized on a remote island, and why so much effort was invested in building a ceremonial center over the sea. Oral traditions speak of powerful rulers, of sacred authority, of construction beyond ordinary means. Archaeology points to hierarchy, labor organization, and ritual control. Nan Madol may have been designed not simply as a city, but as a statement. Power made visible, authority built in stone and water, a place separated from daily life, where rulers could transform distance into dominance. Today, Nan Madol is often called mysterious because of its remoteness, but perhaps its deeper mystery is not that it was isolated. It is that isolation did not limit ambition. Here, surrounded by ocean, a society created a monument of authority as complex as any royal center on earth. A reminder that civilization does not belong only to continents. It rises wherever human imagination finds form. But some stories of ancient artifacts are harder to separate from myth. Some mysteries may not reveal hidden history, but the danger of wanting too much from it. In the world of ancient mysteries, few stories are as controversial as the so-called Dropa stones, discs allegedly found in remote mountains, marked with strange grooves, linked to stories of sky beings, lost tribes, and forbidden archaeology. A perfect mystery, perhaps too perfect, because unlike other discoveries in this series, the evidence here is fragile, unverified, and surrounded by uncertainty. The Dropa story has circulated for decades, but reliable archaeological documentation is lacking. No secure excavation context, no accepted museum inventory, no confirmed scholarly chain of custody, and that matters, because without context, an object becomes vulnerable to exaggeration, to misidentification, to invention. Not every mystery is evidence of a hidden civilization. Sometimes, it is evidence of how legends are built. Ancient knowledge is not built on believing everything. It is built on asking better questions. What is proven? What is claimed? What is missing? The Dropa stones may not be a reliable archaeological mystery, but they are still part of the story, because they show how badly we want the past to contain secrets, and how easily that desire can become a myth of its own. Our next mystery is different. No rumor, no missing artifact, just thousands of stones standing in rows across the landscape. In Brittany, France, across fields near the Atlantic coast, thousands of standing stones stretch in long, ordered lines. They are not random, they are not natural, they were placed, one after another, across the landscape. The Carnac stones form one of the most extraordinary megalithic complexes in Europe, and their purpose remains uncertain. Some stones are small, others stand taller than a person. Together, they create a rhythm across the land, a pattern that seems deliberate but difficult to decode. Were they ceremonial pathways, astronomical markers, territorial symbols, a ritual landscape for the living and the dead? The stones do not explain themselves. They only continue, line after line, toward a meaning that has not survived. The scale is difficult to grasp from one position. Only when seen from above does the landscape reveal its strange order, and perhaps that is the point. These stones may not have been meant as isolated monuments. They may have formed part of a larger, sacred geography, a way of turning land into memory. Carnac is not mysterious because stone cannot be moved. It is mysterious because meaning cannot always be excavated. We can measure the rows, we can date the stones, we can map the terrain. But the reason people returned here, generation after generation, to raise stone after stone, remains hidden in the silence between them. Some stones were raised, others were never finished, and sometimes the unfinished object tells us more than the completed monument. In the ancient granite quarries of Aswan, Egypt, lies a monument that never stood, an obelisk, carved directly from bedrock, enormous, longer and heavier than any known standing obelisk. But before it could be freed from the stone, it cracked and was abandoned. The unfinished obelisk is a rare gift. It shows process, not just result. Tool marks, cutting channels. The ambition of ancient stoneworkers, frozen mid-project. Most monuments show us success. This one shows us failure. And failure is evidence. It reveals the limits, risks, and methods of an ancient engineering world often mistaken for perfection. If completed, it would have been a masterpiece of extraction and transport, but the crack made it useless. And so it remained in the quarry, a monument to a monument, a negative space in history. Its mystery is not whether Egyptians could work stone. They could. Its mystery is how far they were willing to push the material, and how much they understood before the stone itself said no. The unfinished obelisk is not a failure in the way we usually imagine failure. It is a preserved moment of decision, a place where ambition met geology, where human design confronted the hidden weakness inside stone. And perhaps that is why it matters. Because ruins do not only show what people achieved, they show what they attempted. Our final mystery of Part 3 begins not with stone, but with fire, a city destroyed, a civilization preserved in disaster, and a warning written in ash. When Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 CE, the cities beneath it were overwhelmed. Pompeii, Herculaneum, homes, streets, shops, bodies, meals, graffiti, gestures, all buried beneath volcanic ash and heat. Disaster became preservation. Death became an archive. And the everyday world of Rome was sealed beneath the earth. Pompeii is famous because it feels immediate. A bakery still has ovens. Walls still have paintings. Streets still have wheel ruts. You do not simply see ruins. You see interruption. A life stopped mid-sentence. But the mystery of Pompeii is not what happened. The eruption is known. The deeper mystery is what preservation reveals, and what it still cannot tell us. The plaster casts of victims became some of archaeology's most haunting images. Human absence made visible, a hand raised, a body curled, a final posture preserved by ash. But these casts are not simply symbols of tragedy. They are evidence of vulnerability, evidence of suddenness, evidence that archaeology is never only about things, it is about lives. That is the paradox of Pompeii. It shows so much that we begin to imagine we know everything. But a preserved moment is not a full life. A street is not a society. A body is not a biography. A room is not a memory. The ash saved evidence, but it also froze it, and frozen things can be mistaken for complete things. Ten more mysteries. Perfect stone spheres in Costa Rica, a city carved into cliffs, Moai watching over an island, a boy king sealed in gold, jars scattered across a landscape of death, a city built over water, a legend that tests our hunger for mystery, rows of stones across Brittany, an obelisk abandoned by its own crack, and a Roman city preserved by catastrophe. Each one asks something different. How did they build it? Why did they make it? What did it mean? What have we misunderstood? But together, they ask something larger. How much of the human story remains outside the light, and how many answers are still waiting beneath stone, beneath water, beneath ash, beneath silence?